Hello everyone and welcome to GR Golf, and welcome to today's video where we talk about golf clubs and their purposes. Now, I have laid out here all the golf clubs that I keep in my bag. Your set may be slightly different, but I'm going to go over my bag to help us better understand what each golf club is used for. Now, first thing to note is the rules of golf allow us to have up to 14 golf clubs in our golf bag. We can't have any more than that. You can have less, but you cannot have any more than 14. I actually carry 14, but if you're just beginning in the sport, you can get around with just 4 or 5 to get going and have a lot of fun. But for this video, I'm going to show you my set. We'll talk about what their different purposes are. You're going to learn a lot, have a lot of fun, and hopefully use it to better your golf game. Now, the reason that I carry 14 golf clubs in my bag is because whenever I'm playing golf, I have to hit balls at different distances, and this allows me to do that with the same swing. What I'm going to show you is my rangefinder, but more importantly, I'm going to show you what's on the back of it. This will transform your game if you, once you get out and get a little more advanced, you can understand what your stock yardages are. So when you watch professional golf and you see the caddies and they're working out a number, you know, it's not just to the flag. It may be to the front of the green. They'll be discussing how far it is to carry a bunker, for example. They're working to a number for that golfer to hit. They're doing all their calculations, wind, the ball's lie, elevation, and whether they want to land the ball in the front or the back, depending on where the pin is. All this math is done to arrive at a certain number. And then the golfer takes that number, which is what their stock yardage is, and they pick a club. And if you can go and get something like this, and you can, once you get good enough and you can understand what your stock yardages are, then you're going to set yourself up to have a lot more consistent success on the golf course. Now, this is my stock yardage for these clubs. This may be different for you. So what does stock yardage mean? Stock yardage is, on average, all these numbers here mean, if I take my 9-iron, for example, and I hit 4 or 5 golf balls with no wind, with the temperature at, you know, a perfect temperature around 75 degrees for my area, no wind, and a flat lie, I'm going to hit the ball approximately 145 yards. All right, now the pros, they're so good at this, they will hit it exactly 145 yards. It's all about that math to get to that number. So now, I have all these other clubs here because they all hit the ball at different distances. I'll show you my card again and you'll see. We'll just go through this. My 60-degree wedge, my stock yardage is 85. My 56, 95. My approach wedge, or my gap wedge, which some of yours may be called, 115 yards. My pitching wedge, 125. 9-iron, as we discussed, 145. 8-iron, 155, 7, 165, 6, 175, 5-iron, 185, 4-iron, 195. I have a 3 hybrid in my bag that will travel 215 yards, a 3-wood that will travel 250, and then my driver 295. Now, you'll notice there's a nice consistent pattern here. And as you get better in golf and you get a little more consistent, you'll find that there's about a 10 to 12, maybe 15-yard difference between each clubs. And that's where it's so important to know what your stock yardages are. So why do these different clubs go different distances? So let's talk about that. I've got my driver, which is the club that I hit the farthest over here on this side, working all the way down to my putter. And then this is that 60-degree wedge that I mentioned, that it goes for my stock yardage, 85 yards if on perfect conditions, and I hit it good, all the way up to 295 yards. And then all these clubs fill in that gap. But why is that? First thing we got to understand that each club has different lofts or angles of their club face. We call this static loft, the loft that the factory puts on the golf club. Matter of fact, this 60-degree wedge means it has 60 degrees of loft put on it from the factory. So if I put this magnet on here and put the club where it's just going perfectly up and down plumb, you'll see what kind of angle this golf club puts on it. Now, this golf club is is pointing up in the air very high because it has a purpose. This club's designed to hit the ball high and land soft. That's why it only travels 85 yards for me. Compared to my 3-wood, which is pretty far down this spectrum. I would use my driver, but the magnet doesn't stick to it. Now we take my 3-wood. We stand it straight up and down. Now look at that magnet. It is a lot lower to the ground. The ball is going to come out with a lower trajectory. Therefore, it's going to travel farther, land, and roll more. So static loft is number 1. Along with static loft, one other thing that causes these clubs to hit different distances is their overall length. If I take my driver, which is the longest club in my bag, and I take my 60-degree wedge, which is down here on this side of the spectrum where the ball doesn't travel as far, put them here side by side, and you can see how much shorter this lob wedge is, or my 60-degree wedge, compared to my driver. And that changes the distance dramatically. The longer the club is, the more speed can be generated, because the arc of your swing that club head is traveling will generate more speed. The biggest change that affects distance is that static loft put on from the factory, but the overall length will affect the distance as well. Now, I think it'll be very beneficial for me to go down through my set, kind of go over some terminology with how my set is labeled, and help you maybe understand your golf set. So I've got my putter, which is the club that we use on the green. It has very little static loft, like 3 degrees. And that's because we want the ball to stay low to the ground and just roll. And then we've discussed and talked about this 60-degree wedge. You may have heard me call it a lob wedge. And that's a category that this club comes in, because we're lobbing the ball up high, let it land soft on the green. It has 60 degrees of static loft. That is my lob wedge. Then I have a 56-degree wedge, 4 degrees less static loft than my 60, and it goes a little bit farther. And this is my sand wedge. Your set may have an S on it for your sand wedge, but that's the same. It'll be close to that 56, maybe 54 degrees. That's your sand wedge. Mine's actually labeled specifically 56. Then we go, on my set I have what is called an A wedge, or an approach wedge. This fills the gap between my pitching wedge, which is next, and my sand wedge. Your set may be labeled a gap wedge, but that's what those gap and approach wedges do. They fill this gap that would be left between the distances of your sand wedge and your pitching wedge. Of course, got my pitching wedge next. Most of you have that. It'll say a P on it, or a PW. And that, it goes shorter than your 9-iron. Now we start getting into numbers. And as we go in irons, the lower the number, the farther the ball goes. So I go 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, and then now I get into hybrids. Okay, I've got a 3 hybrid here. Okay, the hybrid's a little different than an iron. They got a lot of benefits. Hope you may have more hybrids in your bag. Sometimes I change clubs out, and I have more. But right now I just have 1. But the hybrids are very good, especially if you're beginning, and even if you're more advanced. But they are just designed to help get the ball up in the air a little bit easier. But you can see I've got a 3 hybrid. Then I've got my 3 wood, and then my driver. And so hopefully this has helped you kind of just see the progression. Your bag may be labeled a little different. You may not have a 3 hybrid, for example. You may not have a 4 or 5 iron. You may have hybrids all the way down there, and that's fine. But you'll see they're designed to travel different distances. And it's so important to get out there and know your stock yardages. You don't have to be perfect, but just get an idea. I know approximately I'm going to hit the ball this far with this club, and get out there, practice, get better at it, and lower your scores. Thank you so much for watching this video. Remember to smile often, have fun. God loves you. We'll see you next time.